again, these are guys that were leading draftees, Vietnam draftees. And I went off on this at the event we were at the other day. Is there any more hostile workforce in the, okay, maybe not in the history of the world, but this is right up there. You got guys that have been, because it's, if you're in World War II and you get drafted, guess what? The country's behind the war.
It's World War II.
You're going to be a hero. You're fighting against Nazis or Imperial Japanese that are evil humans, and you're on board for the big win. We get that. That's what happens. Korea, like, not quite so clear, but guess what? We still even remember World War II, so guess what? We're going to go get in the game.
Yeah.
Vietnam, they straight up don't believe in the war. They just straight up don't believe in the war. They're there against their will, under threat of prison. They show up there, and these are the people you're in charge of. And this is the answer I give all the time now for when people ask me about millennials. People are like, oh, we got millennials, and they got a bad attitude. Oh, really? Oh, really? The millennials have a bad attitude. Compare that to a drafted Vietnam soldier. And here's the thing that I realized, because and when I started going through Hack again, About Face again, and I started reading that, I realized that you got to change your perspective as a leader. It's not just hey, because we simplified it like, well, if your millennials aren't doing what you want, it's your fault. That's a simplification of it. Because what you really got to do is you got to shift your mindset a little bit and say, like, what? Wait a second. How do I take advantage of it? That's what Hackworth was doing. Hackworth was saying, wait a second. How do I take advantage of these guys? Guess what? They're going to question me if I do something wrong. They're going to report things that aren't done correctly. They're going to say no if I plan something stupid. Is that a bad thing? Let me think about it. Actually, no. That's actually not a bad thing. So if you've got a millennial that's like, hey, if I don't like the leadership here, I'm leaving the company. Guess what? Let's get that person some good leadership. You got a millennial that says, hey, if I don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. Okay, well, let's explain to that person why, so they have a full understanding of what it is we're trying to get done. You shift your mindset a little bit about the whole deal, and you end up in a much better position. But it's a perspective shift.
Yeah.
It's the same thing we always say of, it's not just take ownership of it. So it's if you say, oh, my millennials aren't doing what I need them to do, that's my fault. That doesn't make them to start doing what you need them to do. You actually have to make changes in your leadership style to adapt to this attitude that's coming your way. And at the end of the day, if you do that, you'll have someone that's smart, that's motivated, that will get on board with the program, and will do a great job.
Yeah.
Just like a draftee.
Just like a draftee. And when we see it in leaders all the time, they present it like, we can't lead these people. This is an unsolvable problem. It is a problem and we're going downhill at supersonic speeds. And when you do what you just said and try to change that perspective and then put it in comparison to the story of the draftees, they're almost a little embarrassed, like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those answers. When I give that answer, I have to soften it a little bit because I just can't hit people with a baseball bat. Like, hey, these guys were taking. I don't throw this in their face of like, hey, these guys were taking draftees that didn't even believe in the war and were gonna get killed.
Yeah,
you're like, hey, you're asking someone to stay late on a Tuesday night.
Yeah,
that's what you're asking for.
Yeah,
they were asking them to patrol through a mine-ridden jungle.
Right. Not to mention, this person is actually interviewed at your company, applied for a job, wants to be there. Yeah, there's a clear difference in generations, something you need to think about. But nobody forced this person to join your team.
Under threat of prison.
Yeah. And you see that in the when the recognition hits, you can see it of like, oh, yeah, no, you're right. This actually is a very solvable problem. It just takes some work on my part.
Yep.
And I mean, that's true with everything.
Yeah, and we have all kinds of companies out there that we work with now, and their workforce is now becoming all millennials. I mean, they're frontline people. Right now at a company, the frontline people are all millennials. And so if you don't figure this out, who are you going to hire?
Yeah.
Who are you going to hire? I mean, it's like being in Vietnam. You were going to have draftees. If you don't figure that out, and that's the other thing is you hear the bad leaders from Vietnam that will say, "Oh, the draftees were horrible. I couldn't work with them. They were, they didn't want to do their job." It's like, maybe you should look in the mirror a little bit.
Yeah, and the best part about that is when you asked, same thing with Tom Fife.
Yep.
Because he's like, that's all we ever had. It's almost like he didn't understand the question. He's like, that was our military back then when I was when he was in the Army. It was like I couldn't tell you who was a draftee and who wasn't. I didn't know the difference. They're people.
Yeah.
They're human beings.
Yeah.
And I treated them like that. And so just the idea that you would segregate those two, the draftees and the volunteer military, was immediate indication of what kind of leader you had.
Yeah.
And these guys were like, first of all, I don't understand the question. All we had was draftees at the time. Everybody was being drafted. And second, didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
They didn't care. I didn't care. We had a mission to do. I explained to them the impact and the importance of the mission. Told them their role in that mission and what would happen if they did or didn't do it. I cared about them, and we just did it. And that's my favorite part about Tom Fife is he's just a plain-spoken guy. He doesn't have this really flowery, articulate language. He's just like, oh yeah, no, I treated my people really well, and when I asked them to do stuff, they did it. That's kind of it.
That's a pretty awesome leadership advice.
It is.
Treat your people really well, and when the time comes that you need to do something, that they need to do something for you, they're going to do it.
They're going to do it.